Imagine waking up one morning and realizing you never have to set an alarm clock again. No rushing through traffic, no answering to a boss, no counting down the years until 65. Just freedom, bought not by luck, not by inheritance, not by a miracle stock, but by a simple, consistent system that quietly worked in the background for a decade. Sounds unrealistic, right? Most people hear, you can retire in 10 years with just $1,000 a month, and immediately believe it's a scam, a fantasy, or one of those financial fairy tales that collapses when real life shows up. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The math isn't the problem. The system isn't the problem. The opportunity isn't the problem. The problem is that no one ever explains how the math actually behaves over 10 years. And even fewer people talk about the silent forces that are constantly eating your progress unless you manage them properly. Because early retirement isn't magic, it's mechanics. And once you understand those mechanics, inflation, real returns, contribution design, income structure, compounding behavior, the entire picture shifts. Suddenly, what looked impossible becomes predictable. What looked unrealistic becomes measurable. What looked like a fantasy becomes a formula. So before we dive into the numbers, the strategies, and the system itself, we need to confront one hard fact. Most people aren't failing because the goal is impossible. They're failing because they were never shown the real path. And that's what this video is going to fix. For millions of Americans, early retirement feels like a joke that only rich people get to laugh at. Everything is expensive. Housing is a battlefield. Groceries cost more every month. Medical bills grow faster than salaries, and wages barely keep up with the price of simply staying alive. So when someone says, you can retire in 10 years by investing just $1,000 a month, it sounds disconnected from reality, almost insulting. Because on the surface, life doesn't leave much room for hope. The cost of living is rising faster than paychecks. Inflation chips away at every dollar you earn. A single emergency can erase months of progress, and saving feels like trying to fill a bucket with holes in it. People aren't lazy. People aren't stupid. People aren't irresponsible. People are exhausted, and exhaustion destroys belief. That's why most people never entertain the idea of early retirement. Not because the math doesn't work, but because the world doesn't look like it allows the math to work. But here's where the shift begins. Retiring in 10 years isn't about escaping reality. It's about understanding it better than everyone else. It's about recognizing the hidden forces that shape your financial future. It's about learning what actually matters over a decade and what doesn't. It's about using a small, consistent amount of money in a way that compounds into something meaningful. Because early retirement isn't built on high income, it's built on high clarity. And once you see the real mechanics behind the numbers, the ones this video will break down, the impossible suddenly becomes the most logical outcome of all. Before we talk about strategies, portfolios, or returns, we need to expose the silent force that destroys more retirement plans than bad decisions ever will. Inflation. It doesn't scream. It doesn't warn you. It doesn't show up on your bank statement. But every year, quietly and consistently, it eats your money from the inside out. Most people think that investing $1,000 a month for 10 years is a simple equation. You put money in, it grows, you retire. But that version of the story only exists in textbooks and sales pitches. In real life, your money is fighting a battle you can't see. Your savings account grows at 3%, but inflation rises 4%. Your bonds return 5%, but taxes take a slice before you ever feel it. Your investments show progress on the screen, but your purchasing power is shrinking behind the scenes. This is why so many people do everything right and still fall short. They looked at the nominal number, the big, satisfying number on the screen, but ignored the real number, the amount that actually buys your groceries, pays your rent, and covers your bills 10 years from now. Because if your money grows 7%, and inflation eats 3%, your real return is only 4%. And 4% over a decade tells a very different story than the clean projections people love to share. This is the part no one tells you when they say you can retire early. This is the part skipped in most videos, books, and calculators. But here's the good news. Once you understand how inflation and taxation distort your progress, you can build a plan that neutralizes those forces, and suddenly the path becomes clear again. Because early retirement isn't about chasing the highest return, it's about understanding the real return. The return that remains after inflation, after taxes, after the world shifts around you. And once you learn to work with reality instead of ignoring it, the math finally starts working in your favor. Now that the invisible enemy is on the table, it's time to face the part most people avoid. The actual math behind retiring in 10 years with just $1,000 a month. Because early retirement isn't built on optimism, it's built on numbers. Let's start simple. Imagine you decide to invest $1,000 every month for the next decade. No excuses, no missed contributions, no emotional detours. If you place that money into something safe, like high-yield savings or treasury bonds, you might get around a 4 to 5% annual return. That feels responsible, stable, and predictable. But predictable doesn't mean powerful. At a 5% return, your decade of perfect discipline gets you around $155,000. Most people hear that and think, that's actually not bad. But remember what we learned in the last part. $155,000 10 years from now is not the same as $155,000 today, because inflation never sleeps. Adjusted for 3% inflation, which is modest by American standards, the real buying power of that future $155,000 is closer to $115,000. And that's before considering taxes, which quietly eat away at your interest and compress your real return even tighter. Suddenly, what looked like a promising finish line starts to feel like a shortfall. This is the trap. People run projections on clean spreadsheets, not in the messy world where dollars lose value every year. They think they're climbing a mountain, but the ground beneath them is sinking with every step. And here's the twist most people miss. The math isn't discouraging, it's clarifying. Because once you understand the real behavior of money, you can build a plan that actually works inside reality. A plan that accounts for inflation. A plan that uses the right tools. A plan that positions you to succeed even when the economy shifts. Early retirement isn't a dream. It's a calculation. And now that we've stripped the math down to the bone, the next step is learning how to fix the biggest mistake that ruins most 10-year plans before they even start. Here's the part almost no one talks about, the flaw that silently destroys more early retirement plans than market crashes, failed budgets, or bad investments. Most people assume their contributions stay the same forever. $1,000 a month this year, $1,000 next year, $1,000 5 years from now. It feels stable, predictable, responsible. But in reality, that plan quietly collapses under the weight of inflation. Because $1,000 today is not the same as $1,000 in 2034. The value shrinks, the purchasing power decays, and the contribution that felt meaningful in year 1 becomes almost symbolic in year 10. This is the hidden reset button, the one that keeps people stuck in financial quicksand without realizing why they're sinking. They believe the problem is discipline, or income, or motivation. But the real problem is that their contribution strategy is frozen in time while the world around it keeps moving. So what's the fix? It's simpler than you think. You adjust your contributions every year. Not dramatically, not painfully. Just enough to match inflation and modest income growth. 3%. That's it. Year 1, $1,000 a month. Year 2, $1,030. Year 3, $1,060. It's a tiny change, small enough that you barely feel it, but powerful enough to shift the entire trajectory of your decade. Because instead of ending with $155,000, your portfolio now lands closer to $180,000 to $200,000, depending on returns and reinvestment. And that difference doesn't just show up in your account balance. It shows up in your future monthly income, your safety margin, and your ability to retire sustainably instead of scraping by. This is where most 10-year plans fail. Not in discipline, not in income, but in design. And once you redesign your contributions to grow with your life instead of fighting against it, the decade finally starts working for you instead of against you. So far, we've talked about contributions, inflation, and the math behind the decade. But here's where most people still get stuck. They treat wealth building like a discipline problem, a battle of willpower, a test of motivation. But the truth is much simpler. Early retirement isn't built on motivation. It's built on systems. Because motivation disappears, stress shows up, life gets messy, schedules get tight. And when everything else in your world demands attention, your financial habits are usually the first to crumble. That's why you need a system, something that works even when you're busy, tired, overwhelmed, or distracted. A system that turns tiny decisions into long-term momentum. A system that never resets to zero. A system that quietly compounds when you're not paying attention. And here's what that system looks like in practice. Your contributions rise automatically each year, matching inflation. Your dividends and interest reinvest themselves without asking for permission. Your retirement accounts get funded before you even see the money. Your budget categories refill themselves on schedule. Your bills pay themselves. Your financial engine runs without constant supervision. This is the part people underestimate. They think early retirement requires superhuman discipline. It doesn't. It requires design. Because when your finances operate on rails, the decade becomes predictable. You no longer rely on your mood. You no longer depend on motivation. You no longer fear market dips or bad months. You're building momentum quietly, in the background, while the rest of your life keeps happening. And that's what transforms a maybe someday plan into a guaranteed direction. Because once your system is set, the only thing left is time. Here's the uncomfortable truth no one likes to acknowledge. The first years of a 10-year plan feel terrible, not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're doing everything right and still seeing almost nothing. You save, you invest, you cut back on dinners out, you skip impulse purchases. You tell yourself you're building a future, and what do you get in return? A few $1,000s in your account, maybe a few hundred in dividends. Progress so small, it feels invisible. This is the moment where most people lose the game without realizing it. They assume the plan isn't working. They assume they're too far behind. They assume they'll never catch up. Because early on, every dollar feels like a drop in an ocean. And that's exactly how the system is designed. Wealth doesn't grow in straight lines. It grows in curves. And the beginning of every curve looks flat, painfully flat. It's not fun. It's not glamorous. It's not motivating. It feels like lifting weights that never get lighter. It feels like pushing a snowball uphill while waiting for gravity that never arrives. It feels like effort without reward. But here's what almost no one realizes. The slow years are the setup years. They are the exact years where your habits strengthen. Your system stabilizes. Your contributions become automatic. Your financial identity shifts. Your foundation solidifies. You're not failing. You're building the part that no one sees. Because compounding never rewards the beginning. It rewards endurance. And that means the people who win aren't the ones who feel the fastest progress. They're the ones who survive the silent period long enough for the curve to finally bend in their favor. And that bend is coming. Then one day, quietly, without warning, something shifts. You open your investment account like you've done 100 times before, expecting the same slow crawl you've gotten used to. But this time, the numbers look different. Your portfolio didn't grow by $40 or $60 like it used to. It grew by hundreds, maybe even 1,000. And here's the strange part. You didn't do anything special that month. You didn't work extra hours. You didn't land a promotion. You didn't sacrifice more than usual. Your money did the work. This is the moment every long-term investor talks about. The first time you genuinely feel compounding instead of just believing in it. It doesn't come with fireworks. It doesn't come with a notification. It doesn't come with celebration music. It comes quietly, like gravity finally switching directions, like the snowball you've been pushing uphill suddenly finding the slope, like the financial machine you built finally learning to walk on its own. And what's remarkable is how fast momentum accelerates once it begins. Every dollar you invested years ago is now a tiny employee, and those employees are starting to hire new employees of their own. Your contributions matter, but they no longer carry the entire weight. Your returns are now working alongside them. Your dividends are reinvesting. Your interest is compounding. Your system is expanding. This is the moment that separates those who merely hope for progress from those who experience it. Not because they were smarter, not because they were richer, not because they were more disciplined, but because they stayed long enough for the shift to happen. Most people never see this stage. They quit in the quiet part, the part with slow years, invisible progress, tiny gains. But the ones who keep going reach the point where their money finally pushes harder than they do. And from this moment on, the decade stops feeling like a burden and starts feeling like a blessing. At some point in your 10-year journey, something even more powerful than compounding begins to happen, and it has nothing to do with the numbers on the screen. It's the moment when the way you see money changes forever. You stop feeling like someone who's trying to get ahead. You stop feeling like you're climbing a financial mountain that keeps growing taller. You stop feeling like every dollar is a struggle you must fight for. Instead, you begin to feel like someone in control, someone intentional, someone building, not chasing. Because once your portfolio crosses a certain threshold, maybe 5 figures, maybe 6, the relationship between you and your money transforms. A $100 dinner out no longer looks like a small treat. It looks like a week of growth you're giving up. A $300 impulse purchase no longer looks harmless. It looks like a future dividend that will never be born. A random upgrade no longer feels exciting. It feels expensive in a way you can't ignore anymore. This isn't about becoming cheap. This is about becoming aware. You start asking different questions. Is this moving me forward or pulling me back? What's the compound cost of this habit? If I didn't buy this, what could that money become in 10 years? You stop seeing money as something to spend and start seeing it as something that multiplies. You stop thinking in terms of what you can afford today and start thinking in terms of what your future self deserves. Your patience grows. Your confidence grows. Your discipline grows naturally, not because of restriction, but because of clarity. And this shift in identity is the real engine behind early retirement. Because the truth is simple. People don't retire early because they find the perfect investment. People retire early because they become the kind of person who never falls off the path. Your identity changes first. Your net worth follows. Early retirement isn't really about leaving your job. That's the surface level benefit, the visible reward people imagine when they think about financial freedom. The deeper truth is much bigger. It's about never having to trade time for survival again. It's about waking up on a random Tuesday and realizing you get to choose what your day looks like. Not your boss, not a schedule, not a paycheck. It's about removing the fear that quietly shapes every financial decision most people make. Because when your portfolio begins paying you more consistently than your employer ever did, something shifts inside you. You stop living on defense. You stop budgeting with anxiety. You stop measuring your life by how many hours you can sell. Instead, you start building your days with intention. You spend more time with the people you love. You give your creativity room to breathe. You explore ideas, passions, and paths you never had the energy to pursue when survival consumed most of your mental bandwidth. You stop asking, "Can I afford this?" and start asking, "Does this align with the life I'm building?" And no, early retirement doesn't mean you'll sit around doing nothing. People with purpose never do nothing. It means you finally get to work on what you choose, at the pace you want, without money holding a knife to your neck. It means your time becomes yours again, fully, completely, unapologetically. And here's the part most people overlook. Freedom isn't built when your portfolio hits some magic number. Freedom is built the moment your money starts pulling more weight than your stress does. The moment your financial system produces stability faster than your job consumes energy. The moment you recognize that your future is shaped more by your design than by your circumstances. This is the quiet, powerful shift that turns early retirement from a dream into a reality. You're no longer escaping something. You're moving towards something better. After everything we've covered, the math, the psychology, the invisible forces, the slow years, the identity shift, it becomes clear that early retirement isn't a mystery. It's a formula. Not a glamorous one. Not a secret one. Not a hack hidden behind a paywall. A simple, predictable, repeatable formula that works in any decade, in any economy, for anyone willing to stick to the process long enough. Here it is. $1,000 a month, invested consistently adjusted annually for inflation, compounded through reinvestment, protected by a system that removes friction. That's it. That's the engine behind every person who retires in 10 to 15 years without winning the lottery or building a tech empire. And here's what makes it powerful. It works whether your income is high or modest. It works whether the market booms or struggles. It works whether your life is calm or chaotic, because the formula is built on behavior, not perfection. Most people obsess over the wrong pieces: the perfect investment, the next hot asset, the timing of the market. They want excitement, they want drama, they want shortcuts. But wealth doesn't reward excitement. It rewards consistency. And consistency becomes effortless the moment your system takes over. That's why this formula works while most others fail. It accounts for inflation. It grows over time. It compounds automatically. It adapts with you. It protects you from your own distractions, impulses, and emotions. This isn't a get-rich-quick plan. It's a get-free-slowly plan. Then get free faster. Then get free forever. Every quiet sacrifice you make today becomes a louder freedom tomorrow. Every dollar you deploy becomes another brick in the foundation of a life you control. A life where time becomes yours again. And once you understand this formula, the only thing left is applying it long enough for the decade to do its work. So, can you really retire in 10 years by investing just $1,000 a month? Yes, but only if you understand the deeper truth behind the numbers. The system doesn't reward the smartest. It doesn't reward the luckiest. It doesn't reward the people who sprint for a few months, burn out, and start over. It rewards the most consistent, the ones who plan for inflation instead of ignoring it, the ones who adjust as they grow instead of staying frozen in time, the ones who reinvest every gain instead of cashing out early, the ones who automate their decisions so life can't knock them off track, the ones who stay long enough for compounding to finally speak loud enough for them to hear it. Early retirement is not built in year one. Year one is just noise. It's built in years 5 through 10. When your money begins to pull more weight than your effort, when the snowball you pushed uphill finally pushes you forward, when your identity shifts from someone trying to get ahead to someone who builds wealth by design. And here's what makes the journey worth it. Every dollar you invest today becomes a silent worker, one that never calls in sick, never asks for a raise, never takes vacations, and never stops building your future. Your only job is to give it a job. Once you do that, the system does the rest. So, if this video brought clarity to your path, tap like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to see the real math behind early freedom. And tell us in the comments, what's the biggest obstacle keeping you from building your 10-year plan? Income, discipline, fear, or something else? If you want to go deeper, don't stop here. Click on one of the videos on your screen. Each one will take you further into the strategies, stories, and mindset shifts that show how money really works, and how you can make it work for you.